All right. So, it's great to be here and sharing with you. Um, I am in California right now, in San Diego area. I'm a IT manager at Sony Interactive PlayStation, and I've been working in this space for about 20 years. 10 years at Microsoft, um, 10 years consulting. Been working at a number of Fortune 500 companies, MVP, RD. Um, and yeah, anyway, working a lot in the media and entertainment space, from Activision to Sony now. And even I started my career early on working at slate.com, at one of the MSN properties. And excited to say I finished my quest to visit every country in the world. That's definitely been something on my mind for the past about 20 years. So, as well, I've actually been to India 3 different times, um, in the north, in the south, in the east, and in the west. So all over India. Had some amazing road trips, seen some amazing things. Love Indian food. It's great to be with you all here today. What I want to talk about is CoPilot. CoPilot is absolutely the focus of so many people today. And I want to jump to a slide here and let me talk through. There's a very specific thing I want to show. In fact, let me just start with this little video right here. So I hope you were able to hear the audio. If you weren't, I can just kind of tell you that this was uh, a video that was created by one of our users, who just recently got his Copilot license. But what's amazing about this is it's actually an AI video, which is pretty impressive. I think we can see more of these kinds of things that users are creating, and what's possible with AI. The other thing I want to kind of help you understand is this. Yeah, here we go. So we started playing with Copilot back in November, October, November, and we had our first 25 pilot users. Um, and of our survey so far, we'd had 93% of our 25 users said Copilot makes me more productive. 100% said Copilot helps me to get my first draft faster. 92% Copilot helps me improve the quality of work. 95% didn't want to give it up. And 80% say they'd rather have Copilot than a free lunch every week. um, and the Copilot apps of our SIE users, in the hierarchy, are Outlook, Teams, and M365 Chat. Now, one thing I want to share with you, and obviously the pricing information is not necessarily accurate, but wanted to help you understand the differences between Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft 365 Copilot. And I'm going to demo both of these for you and help you understand the differences. When we talk about Microsoft Copilot, this one is web grounding, which means internet, web pages, that kind of stuff. And it does have foundational capabilities, which I'm sure is probably kind of key question of, but both technology stacks have that. One thing you will notice with M365 Copilot is you don't get internet pages back as results in Microsoft 365 Copilot. You do get commercial data protection, and you'll actually see this protected shield with a link to the privacy considerations in Microsoft Copilot. And then what do you get in the Microsoft 365 Copilot is where you actually get more of that Copilot in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Teams. You get the graph grounding, which means enterprise data and enterprise results. And you get additional enterprise grade data protection, as well as Copilot Studio. Now, this is where I want to spend essentially the majority of this session diving in on the lab. And I'll help you understand what I mean by the lab, because I think there's a lot of great resources to help you understand the differences between Microsoft Copilot and how actually to do building your prompts, taking and getting the most out of Microsoft 365 Copilot or Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is it was surprised to all of our users that they already have access to it. And let me just pop out and go to so here we are on copilot.microsoft.com. What I want you to help you understand, and here you can see I'm logged in with my work account. It is protected. You'll note that pop-up even says protected. Your personal and company data are protected. Now, I want you to help you understand as well the difference here between this and bing.com/chat. Go to bing.com/chat, you'll see it's pretty much the same thing. I'm logged in with my work account. I'm protected. I've got my Copilot. I've got the notebook. I've got the search box. And here you can see the organize, create, analyze, compare, laugh, shop. The creative, balanced, or precise. And one of the first things I'm going to show you here is the fact that we've only got 2,000 characters in this mode. If I switch over to the notebook, you'll notice that number goes up pretty sizable. I get 18,000 characters for this one. And so if I'm trying to ask a question, I can ask it here. Okay, so I'm going to show you the differences. And again, we are in Microsoft Copilot, bing.com/chat, or we can go copilot.microsoft.com, which for this demo, you'll notice we've got a Sony logo here, which is quite important because that means we're really, it's kind of like enterprise search, but it's not search of our enterprise data. And just to prove that, I'm going to say, tell me about the latest email from Luke. And I'm going to use that example because I'm going to ask the same thing with Microsoft 365. And here you can say it has no idea which Luke I'm talking about. It's talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke. You know, it doesn't know which Luke I'm talking about, and it's not even sharing any emails. So you can see it's confused about what Luke email is it talking about. Copilot is always trying to be useful. So rather than saying, I don't know what you're saying, it would much rather give me information and then let me say, I'm talking about Luke at Sony at work. You know, your ability to be able to respond to things. So it can say, oh, you're talking about Luke at Sony? I don't have specific information at Luke at Sony without additional context. So if I wanted to give it context, I would have to actually share it with Copilot, because right now it doesn't know anything about work because it's not enterprise grounded, it's web grounded. It can tell me things that are on the internet, such as tell me about the acquisitions of Sony PlayStation in 2023. Now I can get, acquisition data, which might be useful to me as an employee, right? Really, really powerful data. Can you put, so let's switch over to Notebook. And I love this interface here. Can you put all of the Sony PlayStation acquisitions in a table from 2023 based on location, latest game release, and continent, and any financial. Let's just leave it that. So this is where I think it gets really powerful to kind of show what you can get. And remember, I was basically saying this is included with your Microsoft licensing. Okay, let's go like this. So I've had it build many tables of this information, but this one I'm just gonna force it, push these things through. I think this is where things start to get powerful, to be able to kind of show just how it can take data off of the web and build it into a table. And as you can see, this little Excel button up here, I can actually push this data into Excel. Like, how powerful is that? Really quite powerful. Again, this is not Microsoft 365 Copilot. This is Microsoft Copilot, the free version. It's got web results right off the internet and quite powerful. I can then open this data, and now I've got, if I'm working on data that's on the internet, can be quite powerful, as now I've got you know data about these things, and obviously these numbers are reference data, so I could pull that out. But now I could format this and build a nice little table, drop it in my PowerPoint, whatever. This is super valuable. And going back to this interface, I want to just kind of point out the fact here that this is protected. And when I click on the protection, you can actually see what this commercial grade protection means, and references to Azure AD and or Entrée ID, and what it actually means from a restriction boundary and so on, that they actually do not train their data based on this experience. So that's really quite important. Now let's go to office.com. So we're talking about the web, and let me switch this back into Teams. All right. And Microsoft 365, this team, the M365 chat app is now CoPilot. So there's the CoPilot app in Teams. So don't be confused by the fact that there's two apps. This M365 chat app is being replaced by CoPilot. Now, what is CoPilot? This is Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the super powered one. This one, depending on your licensing, in the US, it's somewhere around $30 a user a month. So it's not very cheap, but it is super powerful. And I wanted you to understand the difference between Microsoft Copilot because you can get started with that today. Copilot.microsoft.com. And somebody needs to put that in the chat just so you can kind of see what that is about. You can also go to bing.com/chat, log in with your work credentials, and see what I'm talking about. Now, what can I do with Copilot with Microsoft 365 Copilot? Here, we essentially can do something similar. Like, remember that I was just asking about Luke? What is the latest email updates from Luke? Now, I did use the word email. I could have just said, what are the latest updates from Luke? And then it would have looked at chats and files and emails. But since I called out email specifically, it's going to focus on email. And here we can see a reference to an email from Luke requesting an admin approval for something. So I get some nice context here, and yeah, nice prompt from Microsoft 365 Copilot. If I click on this, it will actually open it up in Outlook. Right, Outlook in the web. Pretty powerful. And I can even say, here's a nice little prompt, right? It can say, summarize recent emails from Luke, where it'll not only like look at just the latest one, I can get some nice recent email updates. So there's that same one. And you get the idea. It's going to give me a bunch of summary on emails. One of the other ones that's kind of one of my favorites is being able to say, can you share the latest chats from Hal, or something like that. And now we get updated recent chats and so on as well. But I think what's really powerful is, let's say, as an example, that I'm trying to find information on a project. Um, so now if I'm just referring to a project, it's going to look across emails, chats, and documents. So that's really powerful. Imagine the same kind of thing just in search, where if I'm searching for something, it's not going to be able to just give me, it'll just look at documents. So it's powerful of the fact that email integration covers, everything has kind of notifications into email. So there's a lot more integration into email, and chats is where a lot of our communication is happening as well. And the follow-up prompts are very enterprise grounded as well. So if I'm trying to say, hey, can I get the timeline on the project, or can you give me more details on what's happening with this project or that project? You can see this reference to plugins as well. So even just what's in Microsoft 365, we can extend that with plugins, which can be quite powerful as well. Now, a lot of you may be saying, I just don't know how to get started with Copilot. What is a really helpful way of getting started? This little book right here, this view prompts, pops open this interface with a bunch of these example prompts, so that like I was kind of saying something of what's the latest from person organized by emails, chats, and files. Suggest some common questions that we get asked at a retrospective. Help me write a paragraph, make it to this file and make it sound professional. How do I request? How do I write a request for proposal? So for like a template, what's my next meeting with this person? I love the help me prepare for my next meeting, or especially with a one-on-one. If I've got an employee and I say, help me prepare for my upcoming one-on-one with Luke, it can actually give me a nice summary of things that would be helpful to discuss in my one-on-one with Luke. And these saved prompts, essentially what we can do here is if we see things that are helpful, we can actually bookmark prompts that we really like. List ideas for fun remote team building event. That might be an interesting one. There's one related to a calendar. That's kind of cool. This categories, I think, is where we start to wrap our head around what is CoPilot for? Helps us catch up, helps us create content, helps us be able to ask questions and get more information about things. Things like, when is my next meeting with this person? What do I have later on? When is my next quarterly review? These kinds of things. But where it gets really powerful and what I really want to spend the more of the bulk of my time here is with CoPilot Lab. If we go out to CoPilot Lab, this is an external site. So this is actually on copilot.microsoft.com. And what CoPilot Lab gives you is, and I highly encourage anybody who's working with CoPilot to check out CoPilot Lab, because CoPilot Lab actually gives you even more in this dropdown. There's about 7 different options here, and it also essentially extends what options you get. Now, I need to quickly get on my VPN to be able to address that internet issue. So as soon as I get this handled, then I'll be able to get past this piece with the internet issue. Thanks for your patience here. Got to do all the cool security stuff, and there we go. All right. Now, if we go back to that and I open up the CoPilot Lab, once we're connected. Now, all right. So now we're on CoPilot Lab, and this is at copilot.cloud.microsoft.com. And I'm going to put this in the chat. Well, for those of you who are wondering how to look at what we're looking at, you can be looking at this along the way as well. And what's powerful here is these are prompts to try. And you can see all the different copilots. So you may often hear Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, OneNote. What you need to understand is it goes much beyond that. Outlook, Loop, Whiteboard, Forms, with more and more to come. So this is only going to continue to expand. So on this, here we get kind of some samples where we can say, hey, can you give me some prompts for PowerPoint, such as add an image of a puppy dog to this slide. We can also use things like help me to understand, summarize this presentation. That's one of my favorite ones in PowerPoint. What are the dates and headlines mentioned in this presentation? Show me the key slides in this deck. Maybe you're trying to build an agenda as an example. And this idea of being able to say, maybe you're struggling with how best to use the Outlook one around creating a good email. Draft an email to the homeowner station requesting permission to build a new fence on the south side. Write an email to invite the parents to a bake sale. And you can see this idea of, well, you're going to put in your variable here of what you need it to do. Write an email congratulating my team on the end of the fiscal year. Or draft a reply to Rachel asking if she can update the third quarter sales numbers and congratulating her on a great job. So here's some examples of that. But I also think that when I get into Outlook, I'm really trying to save time or trying to understand. And as an example, if I'm in Outlook and I'm reading some really long thread, I can click Summary by CoPilot and get this long thread being able to be summarized. So really, really powerful being able to get a nice summary of a long email. The other thing you'll notice is these categories of edit, ask, understand, catch up, and create. This is really where CoPilot itself starts to be more and more powerful, is our ability to really get our head around what we can do in all these various tools. And what I want to do is jump into another one that I think is super powerful, which is Whiteboard for brainstorming. So let's start here as an example. I'm writing a children's story about a friendly dragon. What are some funny names I could use for the dragon? Copy this one. And let's pull open Word. And let's go new Word document. And here we have CoPilot. So if we're trying to get to our first draft first, and we can open up CoPilot over here on the right. Let's try that prompt. Writing a child's story about a friendly dragon. What are some funny names I could use for the dragon? So we got a bunch of names for this friendly dragon. And you can imagine in Word, here's some funny names for a dragon story. Now, what I want to show you, and I'm gonna kind of end my. I want this one to kind of just jump out at you. There's a bunch of different things we can do in the different apps. That CoPilot Lab can help you around, Teams. It's really powerful around you're in a meeting and you're wanting to recap, or you're trying to understand something. You're trying to generate some action items, that kind of thing. There's a ton of really powerful things you can do there. In email, it's often just that first draft you're trying to get to, or trying to respond
Hello,
to an
Joel.
email.
Sorry to interrupt, but we have only 5 minutes left.
5 minutes? Thanks. So let me show you the one last thing. Is the show you. Oh, there it was. And if you want to go ahead and put a couple questions in the chat while I'm generating the whiteboard, we can end with that I do think this is really powerful for brainstorming, being able to use CoPilot for brainstorming, like if you're looking for ideas. And then what's powerful with Whiteboard as it relates to CoPilot is your ability to categorize and get additional ideas. Yeah, my time is a little bit short, so I want to, I'll save this one for later, but this ability to be able to interact with this and say, can you give me names? That can be really powerful. Being able to say, can you categorize these? And that's really where generating cards in Whiteboard can be really, really powerful. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back, and let's just see if we've got time. Do we have time for a couple of questions?
Hey, Joel.
Yeah.
I got a question on M365 Copilot.
Great.
Yeah, I believe Copilot connect to each of the underlying M365 services such as Teams, Exchange Online, and SharePoint Online, and create its own index. So if that understanding is correct, so what is going to be the storage location of those indexes?
So it's important to understand it's not about generating additional indexes. It leverages Microsoft Graph. So it actually is essentially taking advantage of the indexes you've got. It does respect the indexing that SharePoint or what it's doing is it essentially is like it leverages Graph. It essentially uses the semantic index, but it uses in addition to OpenAI. Does that make sense?
Yep. So on those semantic indexes, right? So what are all the encryption options we have? If at all, actually, we are interested in applying one more level of index on top of the, one more level of encryption on top of the existing encryption.
Yeah. What I would say is there's not like architecture that you're going to have access to. It's not something that you can interact with. It's personalized essentially, and it's more at real time that is happening.
All right, Julia, that makes sense.
I don't really have an opportunity to dive into the architecture very deeply here, but yeah. And we could probably have time for one more question.
Hi, Joel. Hi. Is this in terms of the storage? Let's say all this data is getting accumulated onto the being used on the basically updating the index that is used for all the services. Do they get counted against some existing storage? For the tenant or for SharePoint storage, do they add up to the existing storage the customer has signed up for?
There's no storage question. Basically, there's no quota, there's no storage, there's no aspect to what it's doing from a semantic and text perspective. Essentially, anything that it's doing related to that is included. There's no additional cost or no additional storage. There's nothing you can touch, nothing you can do. The architecture is essentially part of your tenant. It's separate from anyone else's tenant. Your data is your data. And in fact, the LLMs are not trained on your corporate data or even your prompts. It's absolutely private and separate.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that. Thank you.
There's a question there about custom prompts. Per user, you can save your prompts, and you can do kind of with the labs. You could probably build some of your own labs, but essentially, it's a per person saving those book and bookmarking prompts. There's not like a corporate shared library, but you could probably build something like that. I can imagine. I think I'm out of time, but it's been great chatting with you all, and
Yes.
thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, Joel, thanks for your insightful session on Microsoft Copilot.
I'm going to